Hi, everybody. This is Alan with codingblocks.net. And I just wanted to be upfront on this video and give an apology for the audio quality on this. Everything sounded good when we were recording, and we'd even done a test run. And for whatever reason, when the thing came out, the audio quality was subpar. And I didn't want to lose an hour and a half of content. So, with that, apologize for the audio quality, but hopefully you'll stick with it because I really do think there was some great information that came out of this. We go through a real life example of stepping through a database schema design and the reasons you make certain decisions and how that could impact your application code in the end. So without further ado, this is Daniel Agreza, and hope you enjoy. If you do, please do subscribe to the channel. Also, go check out Danny's blog, which will be listed down in the description below, and go check out codingblocks.net. All right, hope you enjoy. All right, here we go. So this is take two, right? Because we had actually done this the other day, and the recording didn't turn out great because it cut off some screen stuff. So yeah, here we go again. So I appreciate you taking the time to want to do this. I think this will be fun, and I think you had questions about some database stuff, and maybe this will help some other people out when they're thinking about how they want to design their schemas.
Yeah, thanks again for taking the time to do this with me. And I think that we'll take a look at what I'm overall trying to approach with what I want to model. And I think we're going to go ahead and just try and build this up from just one table and normalize things a little bit and think about the problem we're trying to solve, and go from there.
Love it.
All right, cool. So, as you know, and we have talked about what I'm working on right now, which is a web app that essentially is going to be a vehicle registry um, system. So it's going to allow enthusiasts of different automobile types to register their vehicle using their VIN, which is its unique identifier. And once I aggregate all of these different vehicles and their location, I want to be able to plot them on a map. I want to be able to use some of the existing data from the manufacturer to make some cool visualizations, maybe using like D3 and some other fun JavaScript frameworks. And I am right now just modeling the database out, and I'm running into some interesting design choices because at first it seemed really simple, right? We just need to store the attributes of a vehicle, but there are some edge and corner cases, right? You could have a specific vehicle that is the same vehicle, but is created by a different manufacturer. And incidentally, you could have two vehicles that are the same type that are created by two different manufacturers that share the same color, but the manufacturer calls the color something different, and they may only offer the color on a specific year. So you can end up in a kind of a weird state where tracking all of this can be a little wonky, right? So thinking about this, I know that specifically I'm going to have some tables that are going to represent entities that I can find some concrete information from the manufacturer, and I know that storing that, those tables aren't going to change a whole bunch, right? So that would be probably things like the year that the specific model of a vehicle was produced, the type of manufacturers that we store, and the type of colors that are available for the model, and the specific years that those color options were offered. So yeah, in this case right here, I know that we want to start with our vehicle table, and we talked about just kind of what might one want to do to identify first off their different tables from their requirements, right?
Yep. And so here, a good start is you've got VIN, right, which is
Mm-hmm.
the vehicle identification number, which is like this universally it's a true unique identifier for all cars in the world, right? So wherever you can, using a natural key makes sense, because assigning an ID to something that's already got a key doesn't really make any sense. In this case, I think we might want to change it from an integer to a string. I don't know exactly what the requirements are, but so we probably want to make this a varchar, however they've got this thing set up.
Yeah, let's see how to change that. And you are correct, because yeah, it is not just an integer. It does have some characters in there. So let me.
We gotta learn the tools we're working with. So yeah, Danny found this Vertibello site to where it allows you to collaborate on schema design, which is really cool.
Yeah,
But we're
so
new.
let's take a look at this real quick, and hang on just one moment.
He's about to go do something to his cat. I don't know what exactly, but he's got a friend. You got to
All
keep your
right,
cat happy.
we have a visitor. So we're just going to try and change the type on this Venn column. So let's see what we can do. So this is real life.
That's another developer in the room. This is how
Yeah.
things really go.
All right. Perhaps. Oh, I see the issue. So Alan, you are currently.
Oh, I have it locked.
So there we go. Okay,
there you go. Take control back. Ah, nice.
Let's do.
I think that's going to be a string, right? So varchar.
Yeah. And I believe actually the VINs, I believe they're actually 17 characters is a standard. So we'll make an assumption there.
17. That's it. Yep.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So some other attributes that would be on a vehicle, and what I think, do you think it makes sense if we just throw all of them on this one table and then we talk about how to?
Yeah, then we'll break them out. Totally.
Okay, cool. All right, so let's see, how do we add a, here we go. Okay, so some other things, we're gonna have a manufacturer, and they will also be, okay, and we are also going to need a model. So that would be a specific model. So in this case, could be the Subaru BRZ, the Scion FRS, or the Toyota 86.
Yep. So the Subaru would be your manufacturer. Your model would be your BRZ.
Correct. We're also going to need to know the color, and I'm just going to use.
Yeah, we'll keep everything in varchar for right now because we know that they're all, human representations of the names of these things.
Correct. So another thing is the vehicle is going to have a transmission type.
And by that, we're talking about automatic, manual, or are we talking about 6-speed versus 5-speed?
So with that, we're specifically just going to talk about automatic or manual.
Okay.
Yeah, and we're also, another thing that I want to be able to track is the location of the vehicle. So the user may give me a zip code, they may give me a city, something like that, and I will want to store that. Now, we'll just call it location. We may want to call it, vehicle location, but like we said, we'll just use varchar for everything to get going. And ultimately, we are going to have a vehicle owner. So I need to be able to tie each individual vehicle back to a specific owner. And an owner could own multiple vehicles of the same model. One other thing that I'd like to be able to store is I'd like to allow the users to upload photos of their vehicle as well. So we'll just put vehicle photo for now. And think that should be enough to get us started right here.
Cool. So I mean, the first thing when we're talking about normalizing or doing a relational database, really what you want to look at is what could be in common between multiple vehicles, right? And that's where you want to start trying to break things out.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we'll just go straight down the list, right? So manufacturer is an obvious one, right? Like Ford makes lots of cars, Toyota does. So yeah, I think that we should have a manufacturer table here.
Okay, right. And we know that the manufacturer, some basic things that so this is a good question, right? So for a primary key, we could either go with just an integer-based primary key, or we could go with the actual thing that makes the manufacturer unique, which is probably the manufacturer name. So in a situation like this, would you prefer to give a generic, ID or like a GUID for a primary key, or do you generally tend to try to really stick with what is the unique identifier for an entity?
So I don't have a great one shot fits everything answer here. I will tell you, like unique identifier, in terms of a manufacturer, I wouldn't bother. Because typically when you want something like a unique identifier is when you're going to be adding data to multiple systems and you need to sync that data across those systems. So like say that you have a development environment and a QA environment and a production environment. If you add data to your dev environment, you want to make sure it can cleanly get up to QA and then up to production, right?
Right.
I feel like the manufacturer table is like a fairly known set of data, and so you're not going to have those collisions. Now, on the flip side, this is where it gets into the integer versus the character. And this is the one place where I'll say that like the application layer in my mind tends to bleed over into the database a little bit, is it kind of stinks whenever you're trying to access something in your application and you have to say where ID equal to. Like, what does that mean? It means nothing to anybody, right? Whereas if you were to make the key like a code for the manufacturer, like maybe the name without any spaces or something like that, I don't see that as being a bad thing, right? Like that makes sense to me. So if you wanted to make the key, Ford as opposed to one, that makes sense to me. And you really don't take a penalty on that. I mean, this is a pretty small table, and when you index this thing, it's a lookup. It's going to be fast. The only thing that you're taking a hit on is storage space, and nowadays that's cheap enough to where it really doesn't matter.
Right. So I think, for the manufacturer, I definitely would want to store at least the name of the manufacturer. And then one other thing I'd like to store would be if the manufacturer is still in production. And I thought about that, and actually, I think I want to circle back on that and save that for the model, because that's probably a better attribute of the model. Because in the case, well, thinking of the Scion FRS, neither the manufacturer or the model are in production anymore. So it makes me think if I need to have, a flag on the model and the manufacturer for
So what I typically do in these cases is I'll have like an active start and an active end date on something. So in this case, like the manufacturer, you might have, if you wanted to put, active start date on it and make that a date time field.
something specifically
Yep.
spelled out, and we've got a
You can do a date or a date time here. Date's probably good enough, but yeah.
date for now to save some space on the screen.
And then typically what I'll do is I'll make the active start date not nullable, and I'll make the end date or active end date. I'll make that nullable. And people take different approaches here. You can either fill that value in with like the max that a date time will take, which is perfectly legit, right? Or you can make it null. I think that putting the max date time in that field when you fill in the data makes the most sense. But the problem is when that max changes, now you have what seem like arbitrary values in there, right?
Mm.
To whereas if you did a null there for, hey, there is no end date, then you can just do where active start date between and then just, now and the start date. So
Okay.
it's an interesting design decision that sometimes come into play, but that is how I do look up tables typically, to where there's
Okay.
like some sort of known time range.
Very cool. Yeah, because I originally was thinking maybe I'll just have something like is in production and make it, a bit, or I mean, I guess it's technically an integer under the hood, I think, right? So just store a 0 or a 1, but that doesn't give you, I guess as much deep insight on that type of data that you're storing.
Right.
So yeah, so we know that ultimately we're gonna have a manufacturer table, and I think this should be enough because all we really need to store in this case is going to be something like Ford or Subaru.
Hmm.
And let's go ahead and add another table for the vehicle model. Now, again, this is probably a matter of opinion. Do we like vehicle, or I mean, do we like just model or vehicle model?
Well, that's actually, you'd almost want to call it manufacturer model, right? As opposed to vehicle
Yeah,
model, because
yeah,
it's
yeah.
tied directly to the manufacturer. So I'd probably just go with model here because you're going to know.
Yeah, let's just do that. Now, with the model, identifying the primary key here, and some of the different columns, where do you lean again towards that? Do we want to use probably the model name as our unique identifier, or do we go with just an integer?
I would probably do an integer here. I mean, again, this is sort of just feeling your way out through this, but this is a bigger list, right? This is a much bigger list, and you might get name conflicts, and there's going to be some weird names over time, right?
Right.
Um, so
Let me do that, and we will. Yeah, let's go with ID. Okay,
And
and
and something to keep in mind here is before we even go that far, these models are going to be unique to the manufacturer. So make sure you
right.
bring manufacturer name in as a foreign key. And then really your primary key should be a combination of, well, no, your primary key could be just the ID column there,
As opposed to now, if we had two things, would
a
it be
composite
a
key.
composite key, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
But
So
in
yeah,
this case, you don't need that.
we definitely know that. Let's put this. Okay, and this allow us to.
Well, keep in mind, your manufacturer key is the name.
Oh,
So
right.
you probably want to make that manufacturer name.
Yeah, I am thinking of this first round schema. Okay, and this.
That'll need to be a varchar 25 to match the other one. And again, like I wouldn't necessarily say this is the right or the wrong way. I mean, various people are going to have different opinions on what should be the key on these things, but I think it's worth at least exploring that everything doesn't have to be a number, right?
Right. So I'm curious how we can add our.
Um, there's unique keys.
Okay, so it looks like it did this for me, and I would be able to go ahead and take this one off here. So let me do that. Now that I've added this reference, we've got a little bit more to work with here.
And it looks like they're kind of opinionated in terms of how they want to name this stuff, right? Like they want to call it table underscore ID, so model ID. But
Right. So let me try this out real quick. Actually, get
and
rid of the.
honestly, I kind of like that flow typically. But you know.
So can you mention that again to me?
So this tool looks to be opinionated on how you name the IDs, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
model, it wants to make model underscore ID. And I kind of like to follow that approach too, only because when you start writing queries against these tables, you have every table that just has the ID column in it, and you end up aliasing them all over the place anyways. So why not just make them, what you're going to alias them in the future anyhow? So
Right.
model ID, manufacturer, or yeah, manufacturer ID. So we have name in there. Um, maybe make that manufacturer ID because ID, a lot of people tend to think of that as a number, but an ID just means it's your identification, right? You pull your ID out of your wallet, you're not a number. That's just what identifies you.
Okay.
So
Yeah. So let's do a quick change here, and then we'll need to go here and let's see. Now let's do right.
oh, this is the relationship
Oh,
we're looking at.
right. Mm-hmm. So let's go ahead and I'm just trying to see how we adjust this here.
Oh, see, look, it tried to set your active end date as what tied to the manufacturer name. So really what
Right.
you want to do there is change that from the primary table would be model. So that'd be that'd be your ID.
Right. Because let's see.
Yeah, so that first drop down there, you probably want to choose
Ah,
ID. Yeah, and then the second drop down, manufacturer name. I'd probably change that to manufacturer ID to be
yeah.
more in line with it though,
Yeah. Let
in the
me.
column name.
Right. And I think our cardinality is okay.
Yep,
Just need to go back here and just clean this guy up.
yep,
Okay.
perfect.
Cool.
Yep. And so your relationship, your cardinality should be good now. It should show manufacturer ID as that second drop down, I think.
Yep. If we click on the relationship.
Yep, perfect. Oh, it didn't save that though.
Oh, looks like that is my I. Oh, right. Okay. Yeah. We called it ID.
Yep.
So that should be correct.
Why does it keep changing that? Oh, no. It's down there. I'm sorry. It's down there. It's asking you if you want to add a new one in that drop down. So you're good. It's right under it. Where that X is.
Okay, but I need to get this guy to save. What is my problem?
So hit the drop down, the active end date, choose ID,
Uh-huh.
and then hit add to the right of that.
Ah,
So
okay.
now it's saving it. So now it's good.
There we go.
No
So
errors, no warnings, no hints. All right, we're good.
good. All right. So yeah, and we know that the model is going to have a specific model. We know that we know that it's going to need to, we're going to need to represent a name, the name of the model, like Mustang or Dodge Ram, for example, right? So
Right.
let's do another, and we also know that specific to, well, so this is where, I start to get a little, I start to think about, okay, so specific to a model, we know that a model has a specific color, it has a specific transmission, or it has color options. The model has trim options. It also has transmission options. So um, this is where I'm not sure if we directly just start to pull stuff off of the vehicle table and put it on there, or if we need to go down a different path.
So I think they actually exist in both places. And so follow me here, right? So your model, this is also another thing to keep in mind, right? Because you brought up the situation to where, let's say a model exists for 5 years, but there's a special color that only lasted the last 2 years, right? So you could even have date ranges for that model or that particular color. So I think really what you want to do is you're going to break off colors for the model, right? So a model could have colors, which means that you should have a model colors table, essentially. And then same thing for your transmission, same thing for your trim levels. So I think all of those are breakoffs of the model.
Okay, and is that in a many relationship? So we're going to have just a transmission type or transmission option table and color options, or just color.
So here's where things get a little bit crazy. So I think if you were going to look at transmissions, like many manufacturers use the same transmissions from a particular manufacturer of transmissions, right? Like there's a ZF transmission that's used across a range of different vehicles.
Correct.
So it would make sense to have just a transmissions table here. So let's create that thing, and then we'll create a bridge table to the models, right?
Mm-hmm. Okay, and we'll need to add just an ID.
Yep.
And then we're going to need, now with naming of this model
transmissions. Yeah. Or here's the thing. So let's talk a few things here.
Okay.
In most places you're not doing underscores. In some places you are. What's the naming?
Oh yeah. I was right. We should definitely stay consistent. I think that the underscore might give a little bit more readability, but I'm not super opinionated. I know the best thing to do is just pick one style and stick with it, right?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. So you've got some columns where you have an underscore, you have some that don't. I know that you're separating the ID in that case, which
Right.
that kind of makes sense to me, but I think I would keep the table name without the underscores.
Okay.
And you've done everything singular up to this point, so let's keep that the same as well.
Okay. All right. And I know that on here, let's see, we're able to, I don't know if this is going to,
Oh, nice.
is that the,
I think so. Let's look at the what it did. So it made ID and model tied to model ID. That's correct. And click the other cardinality. I think that's exactly what it did. It looks like it did it for you.
let's see, we have go back to mouse mode and click here.
And then it made ID tied to transmission ID. Yeah, that's good, man. So that's exactly what we're looking for.
It shouldn't have a primary key though, right? Because
model transmission. Well, no, the primary key of that would be the two fields.
Right.
So if you choose both of those, personally, I don't ever think that you should have just a random ID for something that's just a bridge table.
Right.
So in this case, I would make transmission ID and model ID, both of them. If you can select them both and make it your primary key.
Yeah, let's do that. And that'll get rid, right, and that'll get rid of our errors.
Yep.
Okay.
So you have a composite primary key there.
Right. And
same thing for colors as well, right? So yeah, your transmission, you probably want to give it a name and I don't even know what goes with a transmission. Number of gears, maybe.
Yeah, that could work, or it could just be name.
Yeah.
For now. All right. And so again, I think we're gonna have to do the same thing with our color.
Yep.
And so now this is interesting. Right, our color. So from what I've seen, the name can differ. Like you could have bright red and then cherry red, but the color code could be the same.
Right. And
So
if you're going to do that, then maybe color code is your primary key. Because I think in the paint industry, don't they use those like you could go into any I can't even think of what they're called, PPG stores or whatever.
Sherwin-Williams or yeah.
Yeah, and you give them a color code, and it should. The only problem is I don't know if that's a true statement. So maybe it's not worth trying to make that a primary key. So
I
probably,
think we'll just stick with ID
yeah, make
because
it an ID, give it a code.
yeah, because I know that when I've done some research on the BRZ and FRS and 8.6, they can they can share the same code.
Okay.
So that makes me think if you make that a primary key though, you can only enter in that code once, right? Wouldn't you have to have like a composite key where it's the key, or
And the
they have
name.
to be the key and the or the code and the name?
Yeah, so it's interesting. I mean, you could go multiple routes here. So, for instance, you could literally have a color codes table, and then you could have a color names table
Hmm.
on top together. I think that's just too much. I think it's overkill for this. So,
Yeah, definitely.
yeah, I think what you're doing is the right thing here.
And this is, let's just do again the same thing. Now I do know that for at least this manufacturer, for my specific use case, they only have 3 characters to make up the code. But we also talked about one other issue we haven't gotten to yet, which is I originally thought, oh, I'm just going to make this database for one specific type, and then I'll just create multiple databases. And I think that's a good way to a good time now to bring up that topic and how we talked a little bit about why it might be a bad idea to do that.
Yeah, so I mean, what you had mentioned was this was initially, like you said, you were basically wanting to track owners of these 3 types of cars that are basically the same car, just offered by different manufacturers.
Right.
But it's sort of a fan club type thing, right? Like this
Hmm.
is this is what it is. Well, at at some future point, you say, hey, I want to have a Corvette owner club or I want to have a Miata owner club. Then all of a sudden, what are you going to do? You're going to duplicate your database, which, by the way, you probably think of things that you could have done differently, and now you're going to have this diverging code. And then also to take it a step further, who knows what the use case is, but let's say that one day you decide you want to email all owners of, cars in the various different clubs, and you have 10 different databases. Now you've got to go try and compile that list from 10 different places as opposed to having one. And a relational database is made to be able to handle the relationship. So if you make it generic enough to where, cars have these manufacturers, these colors, whatever, then put them all in the same database, right? Like it just makes sense.
Right. And that definitely is it makes a lot of sense because I will probably open one up for a different vehicle type, and then for one, I think it probably also makes just reporting on my users a lot harder. Um, and having a query against multiple different databases and replication becomes harder. Scaling, I mean, it would be extrapolated by however many different sites I launch ultimately.
Yep. And then also adding a feature to one site now becomes adding that same feature to 10 different sites and possibly 10 different minor different ways, right? Depending on how you change the databases. Like
Right.
it makes sense to keep it in one.
All right, so I need to flip the relationship here.
So the primary, yeah, you want the model color. Well, no, no, yeah, the primary you want color.
Right. So the primary.
It won't let you choose the table. That's interesting.
Color.
Maybe delete that cardinality thing. I don't.
Yeah, let me try that again.
Oh, wait, there it was. It said swap reference.
Okay, let's try that real quick. There we go. Oh, okay. It was due to how I was dragging the reference. Yeah, that will do it. Okay,
Cool.
cool. So now we've got this established, and I think I just need to set both these to primary keys as well. Okay, so we're starting to pull more off of here. Um, so let's talk about the year and how it plays a part in here because the year. So models are offered through a specific period of years, right?
Mm-hmm.
And um, but I'm wondering, does that data about the year, does it need to tie back into um, the color, for example, since I know that colors are associated with a certain year?
I would say so. Now, this is where you can either go the route that we did on the manufacturer table and
Hmm.
make an active start and an active end date, or you could make this model color table just have a year on it. But this is where things get complicated a little bit too, right? Because if I remember right, like cars when they're created, like there's the first part of the year and there's the second part of the year, right? Like things can get, you know, a 2017 car is not necessarily just a 2017 car, right? Like it could be the first half of the year production model 2017 versus the second half of the year production model, right? I don't know how deep you want to go with that, but what I'm saying is on that model color table, you could either add just a year field so that you have to have an entry in that table for every single year that that model has that color, or you could do the same type thing and have an active start year and active end year, right?
Mm.
But I think that's a good way to go with that because here's the thing you can do that's kind of cool, right? Let's say there's a gap. Let's say that, and I don't know the exact years that like the BRZ was made, but let's say that from 2010 to 2012 they offered this red color. But then for 2013 they stopped doing it, but everybody loved it so much that they brought it back in 2014.
Hmm.
You could essentially have two records in that table now with the model ID and the color ID for the BRZ red, and then an active start and an active end of 2010 to 2012, and then another active start and active end from 2014 to 2016, right? So that
Hmm.
gives you a lot of flexibility to where you could even have gaps in the years.
Yeah, I like that a lot because that definitely that has happened with certain certain models. I've seen colors go away and then they bring it back. So, and that's nice because we can, yeah, we can define those things will be defined specifically just in this table, and it doesn't tie into the year table and create, I think, a bit more weird dependencies.
Right, right.
Yeah. So I think I like that a lot. I hadn't thought of doing that. So, um, I could start, get a date, and would these both be something that are unique or not necessarily? Because I was thinking about that, would we want these to be unique so we don't end up putting in the same data, right?
You probably do, and if you wanted to, you could just basically make the first all of the columns the primary key, right? Like you could totally do that,
Mm.
and that will force it to be unique.
Okay. And what is it talking about here for?
Okay, so an alternate unique key. Let's say that you had something else on that table that also needs to be unique, but it's not a primary key or anything. Then you can actually create like it essentially behind the scenes in like SQL Server, it'll create a unique index that
Right.
that will force everything to be unique. Otherwise, it'll throw an error.
Yeah, and that's what I was thinking. So, because I was kind of curious, you know, is that just like a performance thing if one wanted to create a alternate unique key versus an index? Because technically, I guess I could add these as indexes, um, and then it looks
No,
like once you drill into your index, you can set if you want the index to be unique.
so it's not necessarily. It's more of like a check constraint. So the thing is typically when you do that, it creates that unique index behind the scenes. So you get the performance benefit out of it, but really it's forcing it to where you can't have the same value in there more than once. And I can't think of a good example off the top of my head, and I don't know why because I use it quite frequently. But um, yeah, I mean, it's really more about making sure the data doesn't overlap or duplicate, I should say.
Okay. Now, in this case, are we gonna notice any differences if I just set these to primary keys? Because won't that potentially spin up the index behind the scenes?
It does. It'll
Yeah.
put it on the index.
Okay. So we've got that. Um, Now, yeah, I guess for our, let's talk probably next about the, let's see, model color. What do we have going on here? Oh, I got to delete these. Okay, there we go. Right. So a year. Um, so we probably have something. Maybe the table would be model year, and the idea is that um, I want to be able to have. I need to be able to, uniquely identify the model year. And I think this helps because a lot of sites we've looked at scenarios like this where ultimately you either use the year or the make to get you going, right? So if we go, so I'm sure in your head you're probably thinking of what kind of queries are occurring for each one of these, right? So I guess technically they're probably querying and getting all of the options for the manufacturer table, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then at this point, I make an option. I've got the primary key for Subaru, right? So we now can go and look at all models, I guess, where the make, the manufacturer ID or name in our case is Subaru, right? So then at that point we go here and now this is actually pretty slick. They've got some good information. I don't need to go. I don't want to go necessarily that complex. They've got series, and then it's got trim. So for trim, it looks like this is how they're identifying the transmission type, just MT for manual, AC
Which
for
seems
R.
kind of odd, right? Like trim doesn't
Yeah,
necessarily seem like the right place for that, but
yeah. I don't know if yeah. And then they're just pulling all of their data. Um, so that's where ironically, so with this is where, so this, I don't want to diverge too much, I guess, but this is what their schema is there. So it looks like make to model, um, and then, oh, okay, then there's their
the
generation.
generation.
hmm Okay, cool.
Yeah, I mean, how they've shown their schema there is almost how they're driving down through those drop downs, right?
Right. And then there are different tables. Okay, well, we'll go back to R. So specifically, yeah, I mean that is something. So the functionality that I want to occur is, once the user has entered the site and they're signing up to register, I'd like to show them I'd like to show their manufacturer choices. So users at that point click Subaru, and now we can do a query on the model table and get all of the Subaru options, even though it's just going to be one right now, but it could be multiple different models, right?
Mm-hmm.
So then I want to be able to tie in the year specifically, right? So we're going to need probably a model year table or just year.
So this one's interesting.
Yeah.
I think you would do a model year table here. I think that is the smart thing to do. Because honestly, this is where things can get a little bit crazy, right? Your model year is what's going to dictate what trims are available on that, right?
Mhm.
And actually, this sort of brings up other questions as well. So if you go this route and you have a model year table here,
Mhm.
then you have to start questioning, does that model year have that, like, did we start putting the dates in the wrong spots? Like the model color, should the active start and active end year be there, or should it be on the model year
Mm.
itself? You see what I'm
Right.
saying? Because then your key could be, instead of the model ID going over there, it would be your model year ID that would go over there. So there's two ways that you could go about this, right? You could either create a model year table and then hook all your trims and everything off that, Or you could just put the model year in your model table, and then have duplicate records, which kind of stinks. I mean, because for the most part, the name's going to be the same. It's various different attributes are going to be the same, right? Like it's going to be a coupe and it's going to be this and that. So yeah, I think model year is the right way to go. I mean, just thinking through it,
Okay.
which
And
means that we might be changing our schema here in a second.
yeah, I mean, ultimately, I think it's just, this is another example of a car vehicle API that has data that you could pull. And I mean, pretty much my goal is that I want them to be able to, you know, enter in their information and probably drill down in a manner more like this. Um, I guess it really doesn't matter if you have the make or year first, but um, I like to collect some information about their trim, but I also need to be able to show them the specific color choices that were offered. And for the way that I have the data, they stored right now, or I mean the data that I've collected, it doesn't have any overlap for year or anything. It's just, the color is offered, maybe 3 years. So I'll have a record, um, or I'll have three references, I guess, to the year and the color. So originally I did have a year table and I had a color table and I had color years. So I had options like that where I just had the ID of the color and the ID of the year. And the year table standing on its own was just a list of years. That was it. So I
Right.
don't know if,
I think model year makes a lot of sense, honestly, only from the perspective that a lot of things tie to that, right? Like, I mean, take Jeep Wranglers, right? Like those things have had probably dozens of trims over the years, and they're very specific to a particular year model, right? So,
okay. So inside of here, we'll add probably just an ID as the primary key again, and the year.
well, actually, I think probably here what I would do. So model year, I would put model ID as one of the keys because that's going to be a composite key. So it's basically going to be that plus the year, right? Um, oh, but and this is where the whole bridge table thing kind of gets annoying,
Yeah,
right? Like, if you put an ID, then you can use that single ID going into another table, right? If you don't, then you've got to do the model ID plus the year, and you got to carry it across the board.
I think.
You can, I mean, this is one of those where people are split. That like, I could totally see using an ID here just to make it to where you're not carrying that same composite key all over the place.
Now, are we talking about model year just as a name or as this being a joined table and having a year table standing on its own?
No, I would not have a year table standing on its own. I don't think because I don't know that if you think about it, what else is going to drive off this? What else is going to need that? What else does year dictate that there are differences? So it
Mm,
seems to all be based off the model, right?
yeah, because there could be special editions that are offered, and that would drive the trim. So the BRZ had the Series Blue, which was limited, but it was only offered during certain years, as far as I know. Um, so that could be
But that's based off the model still, right? Because the
right.
colors
Yeah,
still exist. And that's
yeah,
where I'm saying I almost wonder if like we shouldn't have gone this route first with the model year. So let's do that. Let's put the model year in there. So you got ID, you got year, and then you're going to want model ID in there as well, right?
right. So to tie it back to the model.
Yep.
So let's see if we can. So we'd want to drag from. mm,
It
If I
seems
can
like
go.
it did it backwards.
Yeah, I think it did.
But hit swap reference. Actually, well,
Oh,
yeah, either way.
what about this?
Okay, that should do it.
You
ID,
got it.
model ID. Yep, that's
Yeah.
it.
Okay. Cool. Yep.
Okay, so with that then, now I think what you do, and this is where things get interesting. So we've got that model color table, right?
Yeah.
I almost think that one should be linked to that model year table now.
Okay.
So let's delete the cardinality on that thing.
All right.
And then let's get rid of active start and end date on this, because that really doesn't make sense anymore, because we're going to link it directly to a year, right? So drag a cardinality from model year over to this model color table. Yep. All right. And then now basically what you're going to have is you're going to need to also link this. That's already got the model ID and everything. So now you're going to link that back to your color table. So drag a cardinality line from your color to your model color. And now you get that indirect reference of your year, right?
Mhm.
So now you don't
Yeah.
have to worry about this active start and end date. You just have a color that lives out there, and whatever years it applies to any model out there, you're good to go, right?
Yeah. Right. So let's see. So
And your transmission table will also be the same type thing, right? Like I think that you're going to tie that to your model year.
right. So we need to go from the model year.
No, not that one. I think that why would we need that bridge table now? Hold on. So maybe you don't need the model ID anymore.
On the
So
model
I'm trying to
transmission
think,
table.
yeah, I'm trying to think, why would we need that model transmission table anymore? Because it's going to go off the model year, right? Yeah, you do need it. Um, you do need it. Okay, so the
Because
card, yeah, this one right above it, the cardinality from model to model transmission, delete that one.
and
And then
then
you're going to want to do the cardinality from model transmission to model year, or from model year to model transmission.
oh,
Did it draw? Oh no, it drew it behind it is what it did.
yeah, let me see if I can.
Yeah.
Right. It's got some weird.
What did it do?
Yeah.
I think it drew a line from your model year to your model. I think if you delete that one, whatever that one is.
Didn't we need that though for
Wait.
the model ID?
Oh, you do. Hold on a second. Yeah. Okay. No, this is correct. I'm sorry. Yeah,
Okay.
that's what you need.
Here, that might be a little easier to.
Okay, that makes more
So
sense.
many model transition. Many.
Because your transmission and your colors are specific to a particular model year, right? So that makes sense. Now we've got this thing set up to where you don't even have these active start and end dates, because the year that particular vehicle model was will take
Mhm.
care of it for you.
Because we're just going to cover year wide.
Yep.
That's right. Okay.
Yep.
So I think that clears. So
Now
that's
we got to clean up the vehicle table though, right?
right. Yeah, we got to get rid of. So we can. So let's get rid of. We'll just get rid of.
Yep.
Pretty much.
Manufacturer, model, and color,
Right.
and transmission. All right. We'll leave the other things there for
Yeah,
right
because
now,
these
because
are
we're
going to
going to figure
be
out.
right.
Yeah.
So drawing. So this is just going to be a bunch of. So this is something interesting. So the vehicle table is represents the actual instances of everything, right? So I've wondered, do I just go and have the model ID? I mean the model, the foreign key to the model, and then I can get everything else, or do I want to have? I don't even know if it would be redundancy to have um, foreign keys to like every other item on here, right?
No, so this is where things get interesting, right? Like I think what you end up doing is is you probably put the model year in that vehicle table, not the model, because the model year will give you the model.
So we go. Where do we get?
What happened?
The,
Oh, it's not connected to the table. It doesn't look like. It's just sitting behind it. Or did it do it? Vehicle model year? No, it's there. It just didn't create the thing
from model year.
to vehicle. There we go.
Yeah. Okay. I had the right.
Okay. So now that will give you the year of the vehicle, and it will also give you all the options available for it, right? Um, so now you'd probably want to take the transmission ID and put it. So you drag from the bottom table up to that,
Yeah.
and then you're going to want to do the same thing for the color.
Right. Okay.
Do they have an auto format on the thing here? I know that SSMS does. They have a
Oh,
way little
for
pretty it. I
right.
bet they do.
Mm, let's see.
I have it open too. Let me look on mine.
What is our one warning here? Oh, model color. Primary keys. Okay.
I don't know if they have an arrange. Hmm. Well, either which way though, I think this gets you to a good spot, right? So,
Oh,
did it just delete all of them? Oh no.
let's. Do you still have it?
I
Are you?
have it open. I do have it open.
Okay.
Hopefully it saves as it goes.
Yeah. Uh.
Oh man.
Well,
I mean, it's all on my screen.
yeah.
It's
Here we
good.
go.
Okay, so it's all good. Cool. Whew, moment of panic.
I know, right? Okay. So let's move these. Well, shoot. I'm trying to think of a good way to. I got a crazy format. No, it might not have that flexibility quite yet.
But I think what we've accomplished here, right? Like if we back up and look at what's going on. So we've set this thing up to where you have a manufacturer, right? So Subaru, and then you've got your model, your BRZ, and then there's model years that are available for the BRZ. So it was 2012 to what, 2016, something like that.
Yeah, they're still in production
Okay,
for
so
the.
they're still going. So you'd have five records in that model year table. Then the model transmissions.
So
You
we have
might
two. Yeah.
So there'd only be two of those, but you'd have a number of those. So you had five model years. If there's two transmissions, and let's say those transmissions have existed for every one of those years, then your model transmission table is going to be a Cartesian product of those two right now. So it'll be 2 times 5. You'll have 10 records in this
Uh,
model transmission table.
hmm.
Your model color, so this is where it's interesting, right? Your color table is going to have X number of colors, but this is now set up in a way to where you can link it to particular years, right? So what you were talking about, that special color, it's not by going the route that we did by having this bridge table with the model year. Now you'll be able to, if you wanted to drive that thing through lookups, you could say, hey, what year did they choose? And now you could actually show the colors that were legitimately there for that year, for that model.
Mm-hmm.
So we're in a pretty good spot right now, right? The other things that you talked about were the ability. Now, all these tables on the bottom half here, right? All these down here from model year, color, all these are literally just so you can drive the options of what gets attached to a vehicle
Mm-hmm.
and how you could search for it, right? So, it, and it's all highly related data, which is excellent. So now what we're looking at though is where you wanted to have things like So let's talk about location specifically because I think this one's kind of interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Would you, over time, want to track that a car went from, say, Florida to North Carolina, right? Like the
Right.
original owner was in Florida and now it got sold off and now the owner's in North Carolina. Does that matter? Like that's an interesting thing. So I could almost see breaking the location off as a separate field, right? Having a vehicle location table that's basically just got a date stamp on every record that comes up.
So that might look like um, essentially it would probably tie back to, so that would maybe have the, well, like the spatial information, I guess, like latitude, longitude, a timestamp, and then a vehicle ID.
That's it. Yep. And if
Yeah.
you look at your column types over there, I think they even have geo data types in those.
Yeah, let's take a look at that. So we've got, well, what would we
So let's call this ID probably. I mean, no reason
get?
not to. Yeah.
Yeah, let's do, and then let's look at our options. So they do have
That's geometry. No,
geography.
typically there is, yeah, geography. I think it's geography
I think,
is the
yeah.
one. So Postgres and MySQL, like all the databases out there now have their different types for these things.
Yeah. And would that specifically store, man, I'm trying to think of,
I don't remember. I've looked at this thing before when I was messing with some Google Maps
okay,
stuff, but I don't remember how it stores it. But let's leave it for that for right now, and the details can be figured out later.
okay, we'll
And
call it
then,
location.
yep. And
Maybe
then
we'll
if you
call
just want to drag the line, it'll create your vehicle ID. Oh yeah, you'll want a timestamp, definitely.
it, store that as a date time.
Yep. And what I like to do on things that are timestamps is I don't know if this thing allows you to put a default on there. Is there a way?
Oh, right.
What's that little drop down thing over there? Yeah, that. Yeah, default value. So that'd be a get date, right, for SQL Server.
Yeah. I think, is it just,
Get date, open, close, paren.
okay.
Yep. So then that gets you this thing to where every time you add a record to the table, you're automatically going to get today's date stamp, at least on the SQL Server time, right?
Okay. Yep. And see if it's cool. So now we'll need to drag from
Yep.
vehicle. Well, wait, is that the wrong?
No, that's it. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
you're
yeah.
there.
Okay.
Yep, that's perfect.
Then oh, oops. That's self-referencing. Here we go. We'll put this guy over here. This is just okay. And then I think we would want to create, so for photos or media, we talked about this originally. I had called it vehicle photos, and then I had a join table, right? But you made a good point about potentially what if there's multiple vehicles in one photo and you're tagging, and not only that, but are you only storing vehicles as media? But in reality, I'll probably have a user thumbnail and potentially other types of media. So we could maybe call that, trying to think of a table name.
Honestly, like here's the thing, just having a photos table would make a lot of sense, right? Or an
Mhm.
images table, something like that. And then those things could be related back however you want in the future. They could be tied to a user's profile. They could be tied to a car. They could be tied to any number of things, right?
Right. So in that case, do we, I guess so, well, when the user goes to upload that media and they upload that image, we, mm, well, one, I need to at least tie it back to the specific vehicle or the user.
So that's where things get tough, right? Like it just really depends on where you envision it going. I mean, I think to start off, having I think that a bridge table makes the most sense for almost all of these. So you have an images table, and that image is going to have a name, you know,
Hmm.
um, maybe a friendly
Look,
name, and then the stored name, right? Like whatever the file system name is.
right, and so we'll have an ID. All right, where did all my info?
Yeah, that's interesting.
Hopefully, didn't lose any of that. Why did it be? Oh, okay, lost it somehow. All
Weird.
right, so yeah, I was thinking probably yeah some kind of a URI, whether that be on the file system or yeah, and typically, have you found this is another hotly debated subject, but storing the image as a blob versus storing yeah string to the
Don't
file?
do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't do it. So here's the thing, and there's a reason why I say don't do it. Is database servers are made for retrieval of information. Like you're talking about a ton of I/O just to get an image in it, because anytime that you do that, right? Let's just talk about the process of it. You store it as a blob. In order to use that thing, you're going to have to now bring it down and encode it somehow so that it can be recognized by the server or the browser. And so you're talking about multiple steps now. Now you got to get all this data out of, and let's say it's a huge file, right? Like a lot of people are uploading, 20 meg files now for a
Hmm.
photo. You get that out of the database. There's that hit from the database to your application tier. Now your application has to encode that thing. Now it has to send it down, right? Like there's a lot of stuff. So my opinion on that is never store that stuff.
Hmm.
It doesn't make sense. And also, if you start talking about, this is where things get a little bit more difficult too, though, is like if you do URI,
Hmm.
if you think about, let's go crazy here and say that it's not all coming on one server. If you're using something like some sort of, why can I not think of what they're called, like a caching,
Yeah,
like
like
a
cloud.
cloud cache, like yeah.
Yeah,
Why can I not think of the,
CDN.
yeah, a CDN. Thank you. If you're using a CDN or something like that, that URI is different than what your primary location storage is, right?
Right.
It's got a different URL. So that one I'm torn on. I don't have a great answer for it. I think you store the primary location of it, and then if at some point you add on a CDN or something like that, then maybe you add new fields to this to where you can keep track of it, right? Because you might need to flush those images or something at some point. Anyways, I think what you've got there makes sense. I would store a reference to the location as opposed to the entire image. That's, in my opinion,
Yeah.
not a good way to go about things.
Right. I think I definitely agree with that. So we'll just have this for now, and we're going to need to create a additional table real quick. That will be our
Yep.
and then we'll need to go from oh,
I love how it creates that stuff. No, that's correct, right?
it needs to be like this, right?
Uh, no, I think you had it right the other way.
Um,
Because you need the image ID in the vehicle images table.
okay, let me.
Yeah, so drag from images up to that. Yeah, and then your vehicle to that. Yep. So that's correct. So that's how you
Okay,
link
yeah, there we go.
your vehicle to your images. And then also, at some point you're going to have a users table because you're going to have a vehicle that's owned by a user, and you could do the same thing, right? Like you could tag, different users.
Right, and let me. Where did we get? Okay, can't tell what's going on here.
Oh, it drew the line all kinds of crazy.
Right, I'm trying to see if there we go, and maybe we can get that guy to. Well,
Drag the bottom of the line up. I think it'll let you do that.
oh
Yeah.
right, here we go.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, and then we can move. mm, That's a little bit better.
There we go.
Okay, so I think we're looking pretty good now. Going back to our vehicle, right? We've got
Oh, so you're gonna want to drop the. Now here's an interesting thing. So you still have location in there, right?
yes.
This is where things get a little bit more interesting. So maybe you want to store, and this is sort of denormalizing things a little bit, which there's nothing wrong with, but maybe you
hmm
want to store the most recent location of
Right.
that vehicle, right? So you could literally now drag, kill the location field in that table,
hmm
but then drag location back over to vehicle so that you have a one to one at that point. Now,
Um,
yep, one to one or 0 to 1, really, if you wanted to call it that. Yeah, there you go.
Now,
And
is that
it's
do we still want to keep the old?
yes, because you could have multiple locations that were associated with a vehicle at any given time, but the location ID might be the most recent one that was added to that table. You see what I'm saying? So
Right.
so that you don't have to go to that table and say, hey, give me order by the timestamp descending and all that, give me the last one. You could do that. So I just wanted to call that out because there's nothing wrong with that, right? It's on your application to make sure that you keep that location ID what you want it to be, right? Whether it's the location that somebody chose that they wanted to lock in, or whether it's the most recent location where it was, like, maybe it's something fun to where people want to say, every time I go to a car show, I want to tag my location, right? And
hmm
then that way it's always what's the most recent thing on their record. So,
Right.
you know,
And yeah, I think let's see. So let's look back at vehicle. Do we have vehicle owner? We have an address, and then for photo, shouldn't this vehicle photo be? Actually, we don't need that anymore, right? Because
right.
yeah, we have our
Unless you want to do something similar to what we just did with location, like maybe there's a profile photo or something like that.
there. There probably would be, yeah,
So if you wanted to do that, you could draw a cardinality thing from the vehicle image over to it, right?
and then set it to a 0 to 1, right?
Yep. Yep. And
And
then I would probably rename the column, right? So right now it's vehicle images ID. I would probably call that thing, profile photo ID or something like that. And so that because just because it came from that other foreign key doesn't mean that you can't name it something that's more meaningful, right?
right, and vehicle. I'm wondering how this just got in here, the
Vehicle image.
Control Z, real quick. Okay,
I don't know what
so
it did.
we
Now,
need
here's the other thing. You may not even want to do vehicle image. You could just do it directly from images, right? Because let's take this for example. A lot of times people that have their profile photos for their car, it may not even be that, right? Like it's usually some vulgar image or something.
right.
So you may not want to tie it directly to the vehicle images. It might make more sense to be just images.
Okay, so we would drive one from.
Other way, other way.
Oh yeah, yeah, because that's gonna put it on.
Yep. There we go. And call that like, profile photo ID or something like that,
Right.
or vehicle photo ID. Who knows?
I think I like profile, and since we're going with wait, well no, I didn't stick with
There you go.
with that. Yeah,
Yep.
cool. And then as far as the user, that's where it gets a little tricky because I was planning on using identity. So what I was originally thinking was just storing the identity GUID on the vehicle. So I will probably not worry about a table there, but um, yeah, I could just go here and add a new column.
Yep.
It could be owner they have GUID?
No, yeah, they do. I will tell you, I'm not a crazy fan of that name. Like, I hate putting the type in the name, so
Okay,
I would probably just put
just
owner ID.
owner ID and
Yeah, it's
what else do they
probably
have?
there. It is unique identifier.
Unique
That's
identifier, yeah.
yep.
Globally unique identifier.
Yeah, so I would probably just have that owner ID similar to everything else you did.
In that case, then that makes sense. Just follow
Yep, just like that. Yep, and then when you create your identity schema using, .NET Core Identity Services, I think is what you're talking about. It'll
Right.
create the table, and then you could create the relationship to it.
Right, which is what I kind of have right now in SQL Server. If I were to pull it up, I've got identity, and actually, from what I've been reading and from that eShops on Web project, they actually have identity in its own database. So I
You
guess
could.
I could,
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with it.
because yeah, it really, I mean, having it all in one database is just gonna create a couple of the identity tables inside of here, which probably isn't the end of the world.
No, I mean, it really depends on what your plans are. If you're talking about just making something that's for, car fans or whatever, it makes sense to put it in here. And really, like you said, it only builds a few tables, and for the most part, like it is crazy secure, and they use tokens for almost everything, like if
Right.
you're authenticating with like Facebook or something. So it's really safe to keep in the database with it.
Yeah, I definitely want to use it. I think it will offer easy sign up because that single sign on, man, a lot of people they really like that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and then one other thing I thought, and this is so speaking of our vehicle, right? I think we're at a good point actually to where this is, something I could this will get me the MVP, which is probably like we've talked about, the most important thing and a topic for a different video. But I've thought about already some cool features, and a big thing for most car guys is they have. I mean, a lot of car guys, they'll build an Instagram profile just for their car, not even for themselves. You know what I mean? So what I
Right.
wanted to have um, was the ability for each unique vehicle to have the ability, when they're in their profile, they would have like an Instagram icon and an input field. They could paste their link to their Instagram or their Twitter or their Facebook. And to do that, I figured I would again need, you know, maybe like social media table and then a vehicle social media join table again. Does that seem like,
That's
or do,
Yeah, that's probably the most correct way to do it. I will say this though, this is a tough one.
we
So,
could store it on the vehicle, couldn't that?
right,
Yeah,
that's what I was going to say. So, I
like,
mean, really, if you boil it down to it, there's a handful of extremely popular ones, right?
right, Instagram URI,
Yeah.
and
So
just be done with it.
that's I wouldn't be opposed to something like that, like if it was the database design. Now, you do that knowing that maybe half of them are going to end up being null, right? And in a
Right.
truly normalized fashion, you want to avoid nulls, but we're talking about, a situation where there are very well-known social profiles that people are going to care about for their cars, right? Like
Right.
you said, Instagram's one. There's what Car ID used to be another site
Yeah.
where they would have those things.
Back
So
in the day.
yeah, so I mean, I wouldn't be opposed to that. And then if you wanted to break out more, like if you remember back to the old Outlook days when you added contacts or addresses, if you wanted to add additional information, it had you pop into a new section.
Mhm.
You could break out another table that's like, additional social media accounts and then have like any additional ones. Knowing that Instagram's going to be 90% there and then the other ones would be, secondary, I think that's a good design.
Okay. Yeah, I think I can see the value for that denormalization and just keeping it right on there, even knowing that you're going to have some nulls. But the thing is, most of the people that I've interacted with, they do have an Instagram page, even if it's for themselves, right?
Right.
So, and that's a field that using identity, I will probably also add for the specific user because the user could have a Instagram page, but they might have a page just for their vehicle.
Right.
And I think this gets us to a really good point. Maybe we'll talk about as I need to scale it because I've talked about wanting to support um, allowing users to put modifications. And to be honest, that would be a ton of work on my part because for one, I'm going to have to come up with something like category, right? And then inside of that, there's a lot of classification to drill down into, kind of like with the article you shared, yeah, just even about headphones, right? And
Yeah.
the different attributes of each mod. And I was thinking, oh man, this could get pretty hairy pretty quick.
Well, I think honestly, once you start getting into the ballpark of what we've defined here and what we've stepped through are like well known, apply to every vehicle on the market attributes,
Right.
right? Like these are things that exist. And if we even wanted to take it a step further, you could add trims and that kind of stuff,
Hmm.
right? Which would hang off the models. When you start getting into things like mods though, you're talking about, like you said, there's a world of possibilities, right? Like there's mods that are performance mods, there are mods that are strictly appearance mods,
Right.
there are mods for everything. So I think that's when you start getting into that ballpark, that's when you start looking at the entity attribute value set of tables for that, right? So that you could literally create categories like performance, appearance, you
Hmm.
know, audio enhancements,
Right.
whatever, right? And then allow people to just choose what they want to add from there, right? I think that's the road that you would have to go down if you ever want to go to that point because you can't create tables to maintain that type of information. I mean, it's basically user. Are you going to know every single performance product on the market? No, you can't go to any site that does, you know?
Right. You really can't. And even when you go on sites like eBay Motors and you try and look stuff up, it's generally not, you know, you're generally not going to find what you want just by trying to go under the system that the seller tried to classify it. Because, you know, if you talk about, I put new wheels on my car, well, that's, you can drill down into wheels and you can also drill down, that's a part of an appearance modification. And you could get a lot of different scenarios that you could come up with, right?
Well, wheels are a perfect example because they're not just appearance, they're also performance, right? If you
Right. They could
got
be
a
lighter
lightweight
weight.
set of, right, exactly. Yeah, so I mean, it's a whole ballpark of different things. So I think that's where you have to give somebody a more flexible thing to where they can just sort of key enter what they want. And then you have a system that will say, hey, these are the attributes of the car. So if anybody ever wants to search by a car that has, carbon wheels on it or something like that, they can do it in a search.
Right. Yeah. Well, I think that this is plenty to get me going, and now I can kind of model what I've got. And yeah, a little bit about the project. I'm working with all kind of the latest versions of some of the .NET tooling, which has been a lot of fun, but also some hurdles to jump over, right? As they've made transitions. But I will say the 2.0 stuff of core has been pretty stable. It's been pretty good.
Awesome. Yeah, man, we're looking forward to seeing this. And I know you've got a website that you keep up, that you have your blog, and I think you're probably even talking about this. You want to share that?
Yeah, yeah. So if anyone wants to check it out, I mean, my personal website is just my name, Danny Allegrezza, and I do blog here. So I've got some random tips and different things you can check out there. As far as the project, if you want to check out my GitHub, it's the same URL, and it is under GT86 registry. So I've got some pretty high level stuff laid out, how to get things going, working with the newer Entity Framework Core and .NET Core. And as I continue to build this stuff out, um, feel free to check it out and contribute if you want to. It's open source, and I'm hoping that once it's completed, if anyone wants to use it, I hope to get it to a point where someone could easily spin up their own site about their own vehicle that they like.
That's awesome, man. It's sometimes it's hard to open source this kind of stuff because you're like, no, this is my baby.
Yeah, yeah. I figured that, especially on the community, the coding blocks community, there's quite a bit of people that are car fans. So I'm hoping I can get some hands to help out.
I'm sure you will. And I mean, you're in there all the time, and there are just a bunch of awesome people They're always wanting to play with stuff. So man, this has been great. I hope that other people get something out of this, right? Like we made some decisions in here that aren't necessarily, you know, by the book database things, right? But on the flip side, as with everything in life, you can't just take a hardline stance of this is the only way to do it, right? So I don't know. You know, hopefully this has helped you out a little bit, and you know
Yeah.
anybody else who's watching.
I think it definitely has helped me out, and I think that it'll help a lot of people out. So hopefully we can get it out there, and people will be able to see really, how to kind of just go from their idea and how to think in the relational mindset, which I think is really, obviously is an acquired skill, and I really appreciate your help on this.
Yeah, I mean, you saw it even when we did the active date, active year on that one thing, right? And then as we went through, we are like, wait a second, this makes more sense. It definitely is important that if you're going to put something together like a database, take the time up front to think through the problem, because
Right.
once you start writing code against this, it becomes a different ball game, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I will say, I mean, this thing has morphed. I mean, we ended up somewhere quite a bit different than our recording the other day.
Yep,
So I'm really glad we got to this point.
that's killer, man. Well,
All right. Well,
I appreciate it.
yeah, thank you again for your time. And hopefully, if anyone has any questions, they can reach out to either one of us. We can fill them in.
Yep, definitely. I'll put the information below this video and, you know, wherever else this thing shows up so that, you know, people can get to us quickly.